Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final session of Dairy Tech 2021. I am Peter Alvis, Chairman of the IBDF, and would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has been involved in our first Dairy Tech online programme. From all the speakers and presenters who have given some very interesting and insightful talks on a range of different subjects that are affecting UK dairy farming today, and to those who have presented new and innovative products as well. Thank you to those that have chaired the individual sessions and kept things running smoothly. Without them, this would have been a very different prospect. A big thank you as well must go to the team at RABDF, who have done an excellent job at bringing together a wide range of interesting topics and delivered a programme over the last 2 weeks that has had something, hopefully, for everyone. This event would not have been worthwhile if it wasn't for you who are listening as well, and for asking the many questions and seeking out answers for different challenges that we face on farm. So thank you for that. If you've missed any of these sessions, recordings will be available for the majority of them, and hopefully you can review them and go back and pick up on anything that you may have missed during the last couple of weeks. Also, a big thank you to our sponsors, who you will be able to see on the slide during the day. Without them, this event would not have been possible. Before we go on to today's session, a couple of bits of housekeeping. Please could you keep your videos and microphones turned off, and also please use the chat function at the bottom of the page to ask any questions. And if you are on Twitter, please use the hashtag DairyTech21. Today's topic is all about the NMR RABDF Gold Cup. The Gold Cup we should be presenting today marks the 100th year since the Gold Cup was first presented. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, we have been unable to complete the judging process, as it is not something the judges felt could be done online to the standard that is required. It is our intention that the judging will be completed when the rules allow, and arrangements will then be made for the presentation. Similarly, we have been unable to hold the Gold Cup Open Day at the firm of Bryce Sloan, last year's winner, which again we will hope to organise when possible. The Cup itself was originally presented by the feed company R. Silcock and Sons for perpetual competition in 1920. During the last 100 years, it has been won on more than one occasion a number of times. The last time this occurred was in 1999 and 2000, when it was won by Dean Anderson at Main Farm, Elgin, Warwickshire. Winning the Gold Cup on more than one occasion is a challenge in its own right. However, between 1959 and 1967, W. Watson Steele of Aylwards, Gosfield, Essex, won the Gold Cup on no less than 6 separate occasions. A quite amazing feat. In 1995, the RABDF combined with National Milk Records to launch the NMR RABDF National Dairy Herds Championship. With this, the structure of the competition began to change. Herds were put forward from NMR regional finals for the Gold Cup competition. Since then, the Gold Cup has continued to evolve to reflect the changes seen in the UK dairy industry. The biggest changes took place in 2017, allowing herds from all management systems, from extensive grass and forage-based systems, to compete alongside housed and higher input systems. Entry to the Gold Cup competition has traditionally been through the milk recording organisations, who have shortlisted farms that meet certain criteria. For a number of years, herds have also been able to enter the competition, having been nominated through regional and national discussion groups, as well as through the specialised grazing groups. In 2020, a further route of entry was added, and we asked industry stakeholders to nominate up to 3 herds, which have met the required KPIs for entry. The criteria and KPIs for entry and for judging are reviewed every year and continue to change to best reflect advances in UK dairy farming and to ensure we showcase the top herds of their management systems so they can be an example and an inspiration to others in the industry. The review of these standards and KPI is something that we take quite seriously, and if anybody feels we need to review any points on this, we're pleased to open into that conversation. I'm going to hand over to Trevor Lloyd now, who's chairman of NMR, and he will take it what a good Gold Cup entry looks like. Trevor.
Morning, Peter. Morning, everybody. Thank you very much for that, Peter. Yeah, so quite how on earth I'm qualified to characterise what a good Gold Cup entry or finalist or indeed winner constitutes is anyone's guess, but I'll give you my thoughts anyway. Where I start is the sentiment that the peculiarities of a small business are that it's always assumed that because it's small, that these businesses are easy to run. Well, the reality is quite different with dairy farming. You know, to be a successful dairy farmer requires a truly multifaceted skill set. It often amazes me, even though I say it myself as a dairy farmer, just what we have to do to achieve success and just how many different roles we have to encompass. You know, and quite often the hackneyed phrase is used, or the hackneyed phrase regarding doing a lot of things rather than doing a lot of things well, or doing a lot of things well rather than one or two things exceptionally, are what characterise Gold Cup winners, or even finalists. But in my experience, the truth is that those who are finalists or indeed win are doing most things exceptionally, and leaving very, very little to chance. The level of attention to detail is quite often astonishing. And the truth is, if you actually look at the average dairy farming business, most dairy farmers need to be their own MD, FD, head of HR, technical director of all the different aspects. And so they're bringing together an awful lot of skills, and they need to be very good at all of those. Most dairy farmers need to be good at them to succeed anyway, but to be a finalist or indeed win a Gold Cup, they usually are some exceptional people, and I think quite often we underestimate that. You know, you look at a lot of big businesses, and those big businesses will have dedicated individuals doing dedicated roles, whereas a dairy farmer doesn't have that luxury. They've got to be good at an awful lot of things to succeed. The one common thread, I'd say, Peter, and everybody that I've seen that runs through finalists and winners is the breadth of their skill set and the depth to which that skill goes. Like I say, they're people who have varying talents and abilities, and quite often another thing that characterizes them, that if they don't have a skill in a certain area, they're very, very willing to accept that. They're very self-aware, and they're very capable of delegating and doing the things they do well, very well, and then getting other people to do the things they're not so good at. And the other thing that, as time goes by, what's incredible is the inexorable rise in standards of the winners. You know, you look back, and there's been, as you quite rightly say, Peter, looking at history, there's been some exceptional people and exceptional businesses have won this award. But then when you characterize or look at what people are achieving today to compare to what we've done in the past, whether it's technical standards, even things like milk production per cow, but technical standards generally, and the modern challenges we face, the fact that people are still able to achieve those technical standards at the same time address all the issues that face our modern world. But the one thing that we've got to remember when it comes to the Gold Cup, what characterises a winning business and a winning herd and a winning individual or team of people is it's a dairy competition. It still comes down to the dairy cow and the herd. The herd are a big part of this. You know, good cows, a good herd, and so therefore technical standards are a huge and important part of it. I mean, if you look at the key criteria for any profitable dairy business, it's still fertility, it's still cow and animal health and welfare, it's still forage and grazing management. They're very, I suppose, by now boring subjects that we ought to know every detail of, but the winners and indeed the finalists just do it exceptionally. They just do it very, very well. The other thing that needs to be said is that, again, almost without exception, the finalists and of course the winners have very well structured and clear business plans and ideals. They have absolute clarity on what they want to achieve, and the key is on the word they. It's an irrelevance to the rest of us. If they have a clear line and path they want to follow, and they do that really well and they succeed at that, that's what matters. That's what characterizes their success, is that they've achieved what they want to achieve. And quite often the Gold Cup winner can be different from one year to the next, but what again characterizes them is the clarity of their vision and the execution of it. The other thing that needs to be said, Peter, is in the modern world we live in, and maybe it's always been like this, is a tidy farm. And it doesn't need to be new. It doesn't have to have lots of shiny stainless steel or galvanized steel or sort of flower pots everywhere, but it does need to be tidy. It can be a very old unit, but extremely well maintained. And it just have that little bit of curb appeal where you could feel utterly confident that at any given day in the year, somebody, a member of the public even, could just walk on that farm and it would be a great shop window for us as an industry. And Gold Cup winners need to possess that, because they are exactly that. They are a beacon for us. We all look up to them. And the one final thing I'd leave you with, Peter, is we all want to respect and look up to our Gold Cup winners, because quite often they're achieving far more than we ever can, and they're the example to us all. So thank you very much, Peter, and I'll leave it at that and welcome any questions in the session later on.
Thank you, Trevor. Really, really good points you make there on what makes a good Gold Cup entry. I'd like to hand over now to Mike King and to Andy Warner in a minute as well, who will have a conversation with the current Gold Cup finalists. Mike.
Thank you, Peter. First of all, I'd just like to follow up with what Trevor said and say that, in my experience, having judged it before, I would say that all of those things that Trevor mentioned there are what makes that finalist. And as a result, I think of that, it's no surprise to see the quality of the 6 entrants that we have in the Gold Cup final this year. So my first, and Andy will follow, is I'm first going to speak to Mike Sainsbury of RP Sainsbury and Sons at Lygrove Farm in Gloucestershire. Mike is not too far away from me, and to be quite honest, it's no surprise to me that he's actually in the Gold Cup final. I'd like to invite Mike there he is. Get the video going.
Morning.
And morning, Mike. Let's see if we can find out a little bit more that perhaps people haven't read, because I've been reading quite a bit in the last week or two, Mike. So tell us a little bit about it. So I think obviously the key things: organic business, you're supplying Cotteswold. Can you just tell us a little bit about that organic focus, how you made that really successful? Because I mean, I must admit, I did some of the initial sifting, and what blew me away was that attention to detail and that litres from forage, which was outstanding.
Yeah, so we shifted to organic when I came home from university. It's a bit of a challenge, really, for myself. And the desire to push forward producing milk from forage and not rely on concentrates and the easy solution. So just doing the basics well, making good silage and siling it well, and getting the cows to eat lots of it is the key. And that's what's pushed the litres from forage in the last few years for us, is just getting to eat lots and lots of high quality forage. We also try and focus on growing premium crops on the arable side, which helps balance the dairy side a little bit and just give us an opportunity to excel in what we do, really.
Mike, on the forage side of it, what were the key things that you changed, which maybe other people do we're all focused on this leaching and forage. What were those key things, do you think? Was it moving to a multi-cut, growing different types of grass? Was it looking at grass as an arable crop? What were the key things that you think made that massive difference for yourself?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really. It's looking at the grass as an arable crop and not just something that grows. The need to reseed. We obviously grow a lot of clovers, red clovers, white clovers in with it, lucernes, and adopting the multi-cut system and using forage wagons has really pushed the ability to make good quality silage really easily. Every 4 weeks we joke about it, we cut lawn clippings, and you go out in the field and you look and you think, well, there's nothing here to cut, but it is premium quality grass. So every 4 weeks, usually without fail, but we might slip to 5 weeks if the weather doesn't oblige, we pick up the bit that's there, but we can make some really, really good silage.
Is there anything you did in and around the buildings regarding forage access, or the time, the amount of forage you were feeding, how you formulated the diet, apart from the actual getting the quality of forage in there? Did you look at bunker space or anything like that?
Well, in 2014, we put up a new cubicle shed when we moved to a nice big clear span building, and inherently with that came a larger feed space per cow. And we put resin on the feed space, we use a robot to push up. We just do everything we can to make sure that when we present them the forage, it's fresh. If there's any muck on the shoulders of the pit, that isn't included in it. Anything on the floors always kept clean of the silage pit. It's just presenting a really clean, nice smelling forage to them. And by using the multi-cut system, you always get nice, young, sweet smelling grass. So when you put it out the mixer wagon, it smells nice. The cows come across and they start eating it, and I think that has a big impact on it.
Yeah, definitely. So the team, I mean, obviously we all know that the most important part of our business is the people, and I know that you've got some very long-serving members of staff there. Can you just tell us a little bit about how that works for you and how you've managed to get everybody to buy into your vision?
Yeah, I mean, our husband's been with us 33 years now. I obviously took him on from father. I find the key is just it's a family unit. We treat everybody like a person, and they all know there's nothing on the farm that they do that I wouldn't do. And we try to keep it simple. So if it's simple to do, people don't mind doing it. Simple things like foot bathing cows, quick to fill the foot bath, the chemicals are just there. It's easy to do. Just keeping things simple and keeping staff happy, which doesn't always mean you're making yourself happy. Sometimes you have to forgo that little bit, but as long as they're happy and they're enjoying their job and they feel like they're achieving something, and you show them they're achieving something, even if it's something simple like buy them a new mixer wagon, at least they feel like they're getting something from the hard work they're putting in. And listening to what their ideas. I'm not always the best at listening to them, but I try, and we discuss things and we talk about it.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And obviously your wife's involved in the business as well, and I take she's obviously a very important part of that. And do you find that team with yourself and your wife, you can sort of separate the home from the business? Do you find that challenging or not?
It's a challenge. I won't lie, it's a challenge. She's a very important part of the business, and there are times where we clash on ideas, or 8 o'clock at night she gets up and decides it's time to go and feed a calf some colostrum. But that's all part of being a farm, living on the farm. You see that, and you're just doing it to keep moving forward and do the best you can.
I mean, you're obviously very passionate, Mike, about what you do. So organics for you, because obviously you weren't originally organic farm from when your father was there. So organics was the thing that sort of was the next big opportunity you saw for your farm and the future milk production.
Well, my father has Parkinson's, so I came home from university and I could see what agrochemicals had done to him. And I felt it was just like a treadmill. We were all using massive chemicals, and there was always the latest chemical to combat a problem, or the latest, as I call them, palette of promise. And I just fancied the challenge. I'd worked at Dutchy Home Farm for a year in my university course, and I decided that it was a good challenge to take us forward and just specialize and try and add some premium to a product, and not just produce white water basically to go into a normal system. It just provided an opportunity to give a challenge and something different.
And so finally, Mike, because obviously I could probably talk to you for ages, to be honest, but the first time entrance into the Gold Cup competition, why did you enter, and what does it mean to you and the team to be actually in the final six?
Why did we enter? That's a good question. We got invited to enter because we obviously met the KPIs, and I'm not a particularly competitive person. A friend said, no, you're going to do it because it's what you do is quite impressive. So I entered, and I didn't even manage to think I'd get to the shortlist. So to become a finalist is fairly special. And I think it's just good for the team. They can see that what they're doing is the right thing, and that they've been recognised for all their hard work. They put in long, hard hours some days, and it just means they get some recognition for all their hard work and what we do, and that the dream is working.
Thanks ever so much, Mike. We're going to get you back a bit at the end for some Q&As, because I expect there's going to be plenty of questions coming in. In the meantime, I'd like to hand over to Andy, who's going to interview another of the finalists. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Mike, again. I've written that down. A palette of promise. That's a phrase I think I'll be reusing. So I'd like to invite Joe Ives on as the next finalist. Good to see you. Good to meet you virtually.
Thank you. Good to meet you too.
And yeah, and please remember, this isn't part of the judging. We're just trying to get a sort of a bit of a feel for you and the farm, your team, and the cows. So I'm certainly not qualified to be a Gold Cup judge. So hopefully keep it at a very high level. So my first question. So winning the Chris May Trophy, fantastic figures in terms of lifetime daily yield. Was that the trigger to sort of say, okay, I'll give the Gold Cup a go?
Yes, it was. Actually, we didn't know we were up for the Chris May Memorial Trophy when we won it in 2019, and we've had a lot of changes since then. So we were on our old system of 3 times a day milking. Then in a fairly a setup that probably wasn't fit for purpose. The cows were punching well above their weight, I think. Since then, April 2019, we converted our existing buildings to robotic milking. And so had a drastic change of milking system and sort of environment for the cows and for the people, in fact. So then our yields, we took a bit of a hit last year because we did the conversion on the buildings with the cows while we were still running a milking parlour, and we had 2 robots up and running. We were converting the other buildings, so we were grazing half our herd up until the 4th of December 2019. And if you remember how wet that was in autumn, we still had our high-yielding Holsteins out at grass until we got the second 2 robots up and running. So we had a bit of a year, 2019. Finished building our dry cow accommodation this last April 2020. So we've had a lot of change. But going forward, the cows and the people, in fact, have taken to the robots particularly well, and the figures now are incredibly encouraging. So and we were kind of advised that it would be a good time to enter the Gold Cup, which we'd looked at before but never entered. But so
this is the year, hopefully. Then, yeah.
We should see. I mean, the quality of the finalists is brilliant. So and the diversity as well, actually, which is something the Gold Cup probably hasn't been known for in the past. So it's great, actually.
No, absolutely, I totally agree. So let's roll this forward. I'm not sure exactly when, but at some point these Gold Cup judges are going to come bowling into your yard. Obviously, you know, you're going to take them off to see the robots. You know, very proud of the new setup with the robots, and you'll probably struggle to pull them away from sort of looking at them. But what's the next thing? What's the next? You're sort of thinking, okay, well, you know, we've wowed them with the robots, but what's the next thing that you want to walk them around and say, wow, look at that, that's why I should win the Gold Cup?
I think there's two things. I think the robots have, the reason we wanted to go robotic was people and cows. Our cows over the years, and Dad was very into the breeding of the cows, and I've taken that on since. Dad's going to be 90 this year, and the cows are the thing. The cows have given us everything, everything we have. The cows have given us, and it was time to pay them back with a good system. And hopefully, we're building a cracking herd of cows that suit the system, which is very important. Of course, you've got to have the system, whatever the system, to suit your particular type of cows. And the people, the staff that we have, we've got a lot of sort of staff that have been here many years, and myself included, getting on a bit. So we wanted to have a system that then was good for the staff going forward. One, for the staff we've got currently, and for staff recruitment in the future, and a future system whereby we can reduce working hours, we can all work in a better system, and I see that as a big factor going forward, certainly for dairy, I think. And there's a lot about mental health issues and things at the moment. If we can get down to a comfortable 40-50 hour week and everyone's happy working here and it's a relaxed environment, that aids us. The cows are certainly in a relaxed environment now. I've never seen cows so chilled out and sleep so well, which is amazing because they have so much more time, which is why they're producing so much milk, I think.
Okay. So slightly mischievous question then. So we're here for a bit of fun, aren't we? So so if you walk them around to see the best bits of the farm, what's the bit of the farm where you sort of try and avoid and divert them around? Where's the Achilles heel then?
Yeah, thanks for that. We've got when Dad was starting out. Dad was born in South London, so he's not from a farming background whatsoever. And Mum and Dad started the farm in 1958 with no money whatsoever, and they had to do whatever they could do to get going. So they sold straw down to Dorchester, and brought Dorchester Army Barracks back up here to the farm, which we converted into chicken sheds, and now converted into our heifer cubicles and far off dry cow cubicles.
Okay.
And they're next on the list to go. But I worked out the other day, actually, they cost us £3 a cow place. So they don't owe us anything. We've got our serving heifers. So I probably shouldn't show them that, but okay. I'm afraid it's a bit of an eyesore, but it works. So.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just gloss over that. Okay, well look, I would love to ask you about genomics and BVD and Yonis and all this sort of stuff, but I'm afraid we've gone through our 5 minutes here. So it was a pleasure to talk to you, and best of luck in the accommodation and in the competition.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Mike, you're up next.
Thanks, Andy. So my next question interview session is with Jonathan Gibbons. So I'd like to welcome Jonathan. Jonathan's farms down in Devon, and he has an organic herd of cows supplying milk to Omsco. And we're going to go and tackle the area of herd health because, Jonathan, is that right? You don't use any antibiotics whatsoever on farm?
No, we don't. In 2019, we moved to antibiotic-free production, which gives us access to US organic markets. Having said we don't use any, if there was a welfare concern, an animal would be treated, but then she would have to be removed from our production system and sold to another farmer. But that's only happened, I think, in 18 months twice so far.
So that's a massive positive thing for your business that you're not using antibiotic. Can you tell me what the key areas that you will have done or changed to allow that to happen? What's been the driver of that?
So probably, as with most farms, most of our antibiotic use would have been mastitis. So obviously, as you can imagine, the key was preventing it. So we started looking at environmental mastitis first. And I think essentially we replace antibiotics with time, really. So we invest a lot of time in trimming cows' tails, singeing their udders, to really keep them as clean as we can, and parlour routine. And we're lucky we've got very, very good staff who are very keen to make sure everything's done, all the attention to details there.
Okay, so is there any other areas? Would you say that breeding had a part to play in that, or a diet, or anything like that? Or
so I think diet definitely does, mostly in terms of keeping them clean. And that actually, once we really focus on that, environmental mastitis has become quite a rarity. So we started milk sampling every high cell count cow as well, to type what problems we were getting. And everything since we converted has been, I think we're all too familiar with the R number now, and how infection spreads. And the one problem we did have, I'd say, was Staph aureus started creeping up a little bit, because we're not treating anything at drying off with any antibiotics. So I think those weren't curing over the dry cow period. So the other key thing I'd say we've done is to create a separate group for Staph aureus cows that gets milked at the end of milking. Right. Really started getting that back down again.
So obviously data is a key thing for yourself. So how do you capture that data, and how do you sort of get that information, or access that information to make informed decisions?
So obviously milk recording in terms of cell counts is key, and that's looked at as soon as milk recording is over. Look at any slight rise is tested, and then it's just a question of spreadsheets with all the milk results on, and keeping an idea on what bacteria is causing any high cell counts, and looking at ways we can change the management system as well. So we get feedback from our vets on what a dry cow cure rate is, and make sure that nothing's going the wrong way.
Right. So is obviously mastitis is obviously, most people on commercial farms would say mastitis is part of the antibiotic usage. How do you manage with calf health and metabolic issues? What's the things that have really made that possible in those areas as well?
So in terms of metabolic issues, we've got quite a lot of attention to detail on the diet, and primarily calving ease, really. So I guess that's where the breeding probably comes in more. We select heavily and feed heavily to make sure they calve quickly and easily. So we'll have separate management groups in the herd, so they're not on too much energy before drying off, and have a strong transition diet to make sure they calve in easily, and we don't get any post-calving problems. Calf health wise, we've invested in calf housing, so we've got temperature controlled ventilation tubes, everything we can to give them the best possible chance, really.
Yeah, so it sounds like that's obviously the market that you're supplying through OMSCO is obviously a very important market. So as a result, you've invested in different areas of your business to achieve that and give you that long-term objection of keeping that market open to you, I take it.
Yeah, that's right. The sort of, like probably most farmers, we don't spend it on ourselves. We sort of try and put what we can back into cow comfort and the mattresses, and good flooring is fairly key, and all those sort of things. But I'd say the main reinvestment has been in having enough labour and good enough labour. So the success is down to the people doing the job in the milking parlour and that sort of thing, making sure they're not under too much pressure. And and they're all very well motivated. So we're very fortunate in that instance, really.
Excellent. Just one final question, because I can't believe that 5 minutes has gone already. That's one final question. Genomics, is that got a place? Obviously a lot of genomics now are looking at the health scores. Is that something that you're looking at or have adopted already?
I mean, certainly it's a key part of bull selection is, looking at health traits, and the genomics are a key part of that. So longevity is our number one thing I would search for when looking for a bull. We haven't moved into testing heifers as yet, but that's something I'm very interested in. Yeah.
Well, thanks ever so much, Jonathan. I don't know where that time's gone, but we've obviously got some more questions I expect coming to you at the Q&A, and I'd like to hand over to Andy, who's got the next victim.
Okay. No, thanks for that, and thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, and I mean, there's a common theme emerging here, isn't there, amongst all the finalists? Is this focus on the team, and you know, that's what's making a successful dairy farm, a successful business. So next up is Mr. Torrance. Hopefully you can switch on your camera. Hi there.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Hey.
So I was looking at you're the most easterly of all of the finalists. So a sort of simple question is you're not in one of the sort of highly populated dairying areas. Are there any particular challenges, if you like, from being a progressive and growing herd in Essex?
Not really. I mean, we're only one of the mugs left doing it in this part of the world, but we love it, and it has brought us opportunities really with cow health and not having other livestock around us. We've ended up accredited at BVD and IBR, and just with the closed herd policy, that's allowed us to kick on that front really.
Okay, so my questions, because I'm sort of a simple man, so keep to the same questions. So the judges roll up into the yard at some point, pile out of their cars, and sort of gather them all up. So where do you walk first? Where do you take them? What's that? Have a look at this, please. This is who I am.
Yeah, well, it's really all parts of the livestock enterprise. Really, we're quite proud of what we've done. We've invested heavily since 2014 in high welfare sheds, gone to sand based, and it's all about cow welfare. I mean, that's what we're all about. Happy cows, everybody's happy really. Yeah, and that's crucial to the way we work, and that's how, again, like everyone else has said, the staff are bought into what we do. We're employing 12 full-time, they're on a 5-day week, and yeah, happy. You don't want tired staff. That's crucial.
5-day week sounds good to me. So
yeah, my wife will agree.
Exactly. So it's the smiles on the team and your smile and the smiles on the cows, which is good, which is going to sell the farm. So you know what's coming then. So what's the one area that you divert around when you're on tour with the judges? Where's the place not to look?
The fly tipping down the road, probably, from the locals. Yeah, we've come a long way in the last 5 years. We're not really hiding anything. We, like they said earlier, we're working quite hard to get members of the public to come on. And after COVID, I think that's an important place we've got to be as an industry, educating the millennials and below.
Absolutely.
About what a good job we're doing in cow welfare, because there's a disconnect with that. So that's what we're aiming to achieve, really.
No, and that's fantastic in terms of sort of, if you like, welcoming that public scrutiny, because I do agree. It's yes, we all need to work as businesses to do the best thing, but the industry overall, the dairy industry in the UK, needs to have that that sort of public facing, almost like PR, which is really useful. So if you read the sort of the background to the farm, sort of very focused on sex semen and beef and obviously use of sex semen, that's what's driving the replacements, and then beef, and then the using beef semen. Have you managed to find a good market for what happens with the beef calves? Do you sell them quite early, or do you rear them on?
Yeah, no, we're very lucky. We've got a couple of 30-year-olds that started up rearing beef, and they take everything, all our Holstein bulls and all Aberdeen Anguses at 2 to 4 weeks of age. So when we've got 20, they come and take them, which takes the pressure off the staff. And then we just have to look after the heifers. And I didn't probably trust sex semen at the start.
Yeah.
Ended up getting a lot of Holstein heifers about, but now we've reached our peak in herd numbers, and we're genomically testing and only using the top 20% of the herd really now, cows wise, and then the top 80% of the heifers for sex semen.
So it goes back to one of the advantages of being in the East, maybe, is the sort of less chance of getting closed down with TB, which is got to be good, isn't it?
We're happy with that.
So the decision, how did you come to in terms of your use of genomics on particularly on the heifers? How did you get to that decision to start using that? Was that something that's introduced? Or?
Yeah, we've increased cow numbers dramatically over the last 5 years, and now we've reached a peak. We were bringing everything in and weren't doing genomics, but now we're where we are. We want to have the best coming and accelerate that, because certainly doing what we do, the genetic potential has really helped drive the business forward. And yeah, you're looking at everything, and that extra increase in your genetics is certainly helping our top end of our results, really.
Fantastic. No, it is. Genetics is the engine room of the herd, really, isn't it? So you know, improving that's a key strategy. Well, look, thank you very much. I mean, that's I'm afraid our 5 minutes is run through, and you know, best of luck in the competition.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Right, thanks, Andy. Thanks, John. I've now got Mark Hoskins. So I'd like to ask Mark if he could turn his camera on and join us. So Mark is Down Dairy Farm, and that's in Hindon in Wiltshire. So again, I'm pretty familiar, just south of the 303 there, I think. Is that right, Mark?
Good morning. Yeah, that's right. Just on the we're in Wiltshire on the Somerset-Dorset border. So
I think the key things that obviously when I was looking through the entry, I can remember thinking grass-based system, really efficient business, Jersey crosses. The other thing I noticed, you're in an area of outstanding natural beauty. How did you get that to work in with? I take it there is some not being in one. I don't know, but is there some restrictions that enable you to get the volume of grass that you require for the spring harvest?
Not really, no. I mean, grass is gold. To me, seeing the cows out on the pasture grazing is outstanding beauty. You know, it's great. No, we've had no problems there. Cows graze 365 days of the year on grass the whole time. We have tried crops in the past, but we're all grass now. The grass and bales through the winter time. And we've got the majority of a herd in multiple groups outside, even now in challenging conditions, which is hard with the weather how it is. But you know, with the management, moving fences multiple times a day, we've got a good track network and lots of water points.
Right, and obviously the Jersey cross is the animal, the breed that really works for you in that system to give you that efficiency.
Definitely, yeah. You get the hybrid vigor. You know, we've been at it 10 years now. We've always used LIC semen. We've got a nice herd. Herd I'm proud of. You know, the cows are part of the family. We're increasing milk solids year on year, and that's down to sort of herd maturity. But yeah, the Friesian Cross Jersey is where we're at for our system, sort of about a 480 kilo cow.
Right, and what have you got a target on how many kilos of milk solids you're selling per cow per day? Or is that the figure is that the metric you're really looking at?
We sort of target for the year 420 milk solids, but we really blew that the year just gone. We're actually up to 480, which was magical. It's really shown that the job is working. We're in the thick of calving at the moment, but we would hope to peak at 2 milk solids a cow, sort of about the 1st of May, if everything goes.
And you know, obviously, the reason you're on that system is it works for where you are, the climate, and the farm. Is there anything what is your biggest challenge? Is there anything that you find that actually, you know, there's a compromise, or do you think actually you've managed to nail that one, or is there something that you would like to change, given sort of some blue sky thinking?
Oh, of course, the weather is always a topic, isn't it? And the weather, I should say, makes or breaks us. I mean, we always get through as a challenge. The week we've just had with the low temperatures, you know, we were casting an awful lot of water around, which we didn't need when we were starting to calve. But you know, so the weather is always a huge challenge. And you know, in milk price as well, you know, we've come through a tough time with what's going on globally, but we're still here. You know, we're still here and doing our job.
So obviously, your spring calving, where your market, your Blackmore Vale, is that correct?
That's right, yeah. BV Dairy, Road and Charles.
So they're really, you know, they're really keen on that type of the Jersey, the high constituent product that you're producing. That's a key thing for them.
Sure, yeah, we're paid on fat and protein, so the, you know, the higher the better for us and our milk price. They're a local outfit, they're expanding. Yeah, they want the milk. So all is good there.
Excellent. So obviously, I'm going to follow on from what Andy was saying to cover the other guys. Obviously, you've got Gold Cup judging coming up. I get it. Like from just a few minutes, you're going to be really keen to show the people the cows and, you know, the system and how it's working. Is there anything else that you think that you would, you know, be really want to impress upon the judges other than that cows? Is there any part of anything that you've told us today that you know, you'd really like to get a bit more information over to them?
Yeah, obviously the cows do the work. The staff, we've got a great team at the moment. I guess something really to get over to them is where we've come in 10 years. It was a very small unit when we started, sort of a 100 cow unit, and we haven't got much in the way of infrastructure and buildings and concrete. So people are very surprised with the number of cows we milk at this dairy. But it's more about the land. You know, the cows are out, like I say, all year. So we've got the land base, but we're doing it we've built the system on a very meager budget. So I guess that for me sort of stands out, that it can be done, and it is a blueprint to other potential new entrants. So yeah, it's the open air, almost parlour, and the minimal infrastructure.
So final question for you, Mark, because the time has gone against us again very quickly. The 5 minutes are up. What does the future hold for you?
Yeah, I love the job. I love the cows. I love what I do. I'm very lucky, really. I'm doing something that I enjoy. I'm working with a great team, a local team, and I really enjoy what I do. I'm involved in an equity partnership here, and we're contract farming with the landlord. So I always try and better myself, and I'm hoping, you know, one day if you know, everything goes to plan, I'd like to get into farm ownership.
Great. Thanks very much, Mark. You've given us a great insight into what you do down there in a very short space of time, and I'm sure the judges will be really looking forward to coming and having a look around. I wish I was judging. Right, I'm going to hand back to Andy, and I'd just like to make one request. Anybody who's online with us viewing, could we get some questions coming? We've got a few come through. More questions would be great. At least you've got a golden opportunity here to quiz these guys and see what made them get, you know, what's got them into the last six. So over to you, Andy.
Okay, thanks very much, Mike. And I can see John's on already, so good to see you, John.
Good morning. Good morning.
So just remembering, I'm certainly not a judge, so this isn't part of the judging process. Just reading the information. One of the things that struck me from the farm, John, was working with neighbouring farms in terms of either buying in forage or the export, if you like, of manure. And I think that's something which dairy farming going forward is going to be very important to the way in which farms run. So have you got any particular sort of advice to people about how you manage relationships with neighbouring farms, particularly in that business to business type relationship?
Well, thank you, Andy. I mean, it is a pivotal part of the way we operate. Mark was just saying that he'd got that great land resource, and our total sort of farm size is just 160 hectares. And so without neighbours' cooperation and assistance, we'd be really struggling. We're very fortunate that there's a couple of arable farms across the road and down the road who have no access to organic manures. So they're close for carting slurry too, and also available to grow principally maize crops. But there's 4 or 5 landowners locally who are helping us on an annual basis, and absolutely pivotal to generate the amount of forage we need. And of course, although we're not in an MVZ, we do generate, despite summer grazing and so on, we generate a fair amount of manure which we need to spread over a big acreage.
And how do you get them involved in very much, or it is just because I also notice it's 100th year of your herd, which is a great circle of life thing with the 100th running of the Gold Cup. But do you work at that partnership with neighbours, or is it just sort of evolved over time and it's very comfortable?
It has been an evolution, and we've got a near neighbour that we've worked with for 3 years, and his farming business is going in a slightly different direction. And it's a farm with less than ideal infrastructure for big silage kit and so on. And it's just something that he particularly doesn't want to pursue. But we're very fortunate there are lots of options not very far away, and everyone's crying out for organic manure and that sort of thing. Yeah. So it is an evolution. We tend, with maize, for example, we choose the varieties so that we have a uniform product, and we buy the forage by the ton. So we have a weighbridge and everything when it comes onto the farm. So there's a lot of clarity, but the crops are grown by the farmer. So we don't rent the acres; we buy the crop. So it's incumbent on them to do a good job growing the crop for their own benefit.
Fantastic. Okay, well, John, you know what's coming. Two questions. So the judges arrive. Where do you take them first?
Well, I think it's interesting to just to communicate the journey we've been on. So what we're very proud of is the fact that our original dairy building's 55 years old, and from the air it looks very much the same as it did when my father put it up in 1969 or whatever. But we've done a huge amount of reorganization under the roof. And a lot of what we've done on the farm until 2 or 3 years ago, when we put a new shed up, was to convert the use. So from when we went from straw housing to sand, we obviously freed up straw sheds. The tractor implement shed and workshop is the dry cow house. And we've just innovated all around the yard and found accommodation for cows and young stock wherever we could. So we've managed to get to 400 cows basically by completely reorganizing the layout of the farm. And then we put a new shed up in 2017, 2018, which has enabled us to get to 540 now. But we're very proud of what we've achieved with some fairly average facilities. We've obviously, we maintain them to a high standard, but I think the point that was made in the intro is that it's not all necessarily about shiny gates and new concrete. We have invested on an ongoing basis for many, many years, and we continue to do that. So we have a very mixed facility with old and new housing and so on. But we try to make real focus about the cow environment to create a stress-free cow environment. And we done a lot of things following visits from Joep Driessen at Cow Signals. and Kingshay House My Herd, which has enabled us to develop, extra troughs, improve ventilation, put more water in, sort the lying accommodation out so it's premium for cow comfort. And so we're very pleased about the whole package that we have offered to deliver results that have continued to improve, and it's something the team is all very proud of, and we certainly are.
Well, brilliant. Thanks for that, John, and for a very full answer. And I'm sure the tactics there were to avoid me asking the next question, but there must be something that you would want them not to see.
Well, we've got a track access from our silage clamps round to the new shed, and we had to put a hard rubble road in to build the shed, and then we were confronted with a winter. And then, of course, the track's in use, so we have a track that is not ideal. But at some stage, we have now a bigger investment to get it right now because of we have to dig out the rubble road and start again, and that's an area we'd love to change, but it's tying up a lot of cash, and it will have to be done. Okay,
life's a journey, so hopefully you can avoid seeing that. Yeah,
there's always the next investment.
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you for that, John. That's our sort of 5 minutes. So I'm going to hand back to the chairman for the day, which is Peter.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Andy. That's really interesting, listening to the 6 finalists there and hearing their thoughts and bits and pieces. I'd like to ask the finalists to come back on screen if they can, along with Trevor, Andy and Mike. And we've got a few questions that have come through the system. So kicking off first, if I can, we had a question in from Janice. And aimed mainly to start with for Jonathan Gibbons, if we could. What do you think the best things you have done to minimise pneumonia in calves are? Jonathan, what are your thoughts on that?
Probably the best thing, I think we've got the new accommodation. It is really the ventilation. Again, staff and cloche. It's hard to put it down to one thing, really. I think probably actually the best thing is keeping clear, when we can keep clear of TV and keep numbers and stocking rates low is fairly key. So enough accommodation and good enough accommodation has been fairly key, really.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to chip in on that? Is any things that they've done? Joe?
Yeah, just say we had our calf accommodation wasn't brilliant. We had groups of calves on a computerized calf feeder up until about 4 years ago, and converted to went to hutches, calf hutches, and that has basically eliminated any intervention with any antibiotics for the calves, totally, completely, and it's been brilliant. So.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else want to chip in with that, or we'll move on to another question?
Yeah, I would say, Peter, we do find that getting animals outside as soon as possible, the youngsters, we never seem to get a problem with pneumonia if they're outside, but there's more risk when they're inside. And just following on what Jonathan was saying about ventilation when the calves are inside, good ventilation, but also keeping the draft off of them, and a nice dry bed.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Moving on then, a question from 4 partners to everybody really. What do you see as the biggest challenge for your farming business and UK dairy farming over the next 10 years? So John, let's come to you, John Downing.
Okay, so one of the biggest challenges, I think, particularly with the advent of 2021, is going to be staff provision and access to staff. We rely quite heavily on a team that's largely derived from Central Europe, and we're obviously doing everything we can to provide, as John Torrance was saying, an environment where they buy into everything we're doing, well rewarded financially with regular time off and things. But the resource from that part of the world is definitely under threat, and there does, certainly in the part of the country that John Torrance and I live in, there's a lot of people who have access to a more perhaps industrial or urban work with regular time off, and without doing the sort of hours that we often need to do on a 3 times a day milking system. And we see that as being a real challenge for us down the track. So it's really imperative that we do everything we can to keep a harmonious balance for our team and provide them everything that they need. I think that's one of the big challenges.
Okay, thank you. Mike Sainsbury?
Yeah, I'm glad I had a chance to think about that, to be honest. I think, like it's just been said, staff going forward is going to be a problem. Finding, staff to replace our long-term employees when they come to retiring. I think just balancing the environmental impact we have with what we do and what's expected of us. I think that's going to provide us with a few challenges, but nothing that can't be surmounted with a bit of thought and forward thinking.
Okay, brilliant. John Torrance, what are your thoughts on that? What are the big challenges you see we're facing, or you're facing?
I just think, I think one of our biggest challenges are staff, like Johnny said, but the carbon footprinting and the hard time we're getting in this industry at the moment, and we've got to be on the front foot and try and attack that, really. We've got all these slurry systems that we've got to change and cover potentially in the next few years, so that's going to be a big challenge. Yeah, and carbon footprinting, getting our heads around this methane and how we can improve it is we're looking pretty hard at that now, and bringing our carbon footprint down.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's going to be a big challenge for everybody within the industry, understanding where we go from that. Joe, public scrutiny of UK dairy farming. How do we get on the front foot again to seize back some of the control of the image of dairy farming?
I think that's one of the major things. I mean, everything that everyone else has said. Yeah, getting public on farm, which I think is important. Getting our message out there more about what we're doing and how good we are. I think somehow the message hasn't got across. There's a lot of good dairy farmers doing good things, and looking after the environment while they're doing it. There's lots of schemes out there. We're doing countryside stewardship and all that sort of thing. I write in the local parish magazine, and we get people on farm, obviously not so much in the past year, but when we can. I think that's important, doing that on a local level and then doing that on a national level as well. So the more we can do and get people and get our message out there, the better. Yeah.
Mark, what are your thoughts on that? How do we improve our public perception?
Definitely get, like Joe says, getting the public on farm. There's nothing to hide. We've got a great industry, and it does seem to be in the news at the minute, and very rightly so, with the environmental impact. I mean, we're not ploughing anymore. We're really looking hard at this carbon sequestration, deeper rooting, plants. We've tried the herbal lays. We're looking at festivaliums just at the minute. There's an awful lot that we can do and we can show that we're doing.
Brilliant. Andy, I know that NMR have been looking at the carbon issues in farming and that sort of thing. What are the thoughts from NMR on that side of things?
Well, yeah, so NMR is a service provider rather than a sort of like a policy maker. So we would see our role in this as very much sort of data collection. So there's been a lot of work. There's various carbon footprinting tools out there. So and there's this very much this focus on 4 F's in terms of the feed, fuel, fertility. So there's lots of people talking about this is your emissions, if you like, in terms of carbon footprinting. I mean, I think where we're going with NMR is we'd like to look at the reverse of that, which is potentially the carbon sequestration, and what are the if you like the not inputs, but if you like taking carbon out of the atmosphere. And that's something that we at NMR think we could look at carefully in terms of how we potentially look at soil sampling, looking at sort of free carbon in soil and measuring that over time. But also we've got this idea of looking at genomics in soil, where the health of soil is very much the diversity of bacteria and fungi within the soil. So I know it sounds strange and you will look at me quizzically, but there's this idea of doing genomic testing on soil, because that gives you a very strong proxy for the health of soil. So we see NMR as, you know, we think sustainability, carbon footprinting is a very big challenge for dairying going forward, and we see we're trying to carve out our role within the sort of the data collection side of that.
Brilliant, thank you. Just on the carbon thing, I think we can probably go through virtually everybody on this one, but how many people believe that we can produce a carbon neutral dairy industry, and how difficult do you think it will be to get there? Jonathan Givens, what are your thoughts?
Sorry, yeah, I think it'll probably rely on a lot of technology. It's very difficult to, depends how it's quantified with the methane, doesn't it? And whether that's a long-term carbon problem or short-term. But I keep reading about a lot of very promising research in terms of cow nutrition and things like that can help reduce us. So yeah, I think if you take into account what we saw, like we just mentioned, then it's possible. I think anything's possible, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Mark Hoskins, your thoughts?
Yes, definitely think, yeah, we've got a way to go, but we're doing a lot already, like I say, with the carbon sequestration, with a growing plant, a plant that's eaten off and then continues to grow. There's a lot of science there. I don't see any reason why we can't have a target and get there.
Okay, thank you. Mike Sainsbury?
Yeah, it's certainly something that's going to give us some challenges. Milk from forage is probably a big factor in that. Reducing concentrate use, having large areas of plants growing, sequestering carbon, and keeping the system going. Basically, it's certainly going to give us some challenges, but it's all doable.
Just tweaking that question of fraction to go forward then. The challenge of the clean air rules and requirements for ammonia emissions, and how would you adjust your systems for being able to do that? John Downey.
Oh, that's a massive question. Thank you for that. I'm just delighted with that. Thank you very much. Well, John Torrance touched on it. I mean, it is, you know, we talk glibly about, you know, covering, you know, restraining the emissions of ammonia and products from manures, you know, going forward. It's going to be one hell of a challenge for the industry, and I don't think any of us are underestimating it. There will be technology developed to assist it, but particularly on a sand system, when we need to put high max in lagoons and things to clean sand out, I wonder how we'll have effective covers for ammonia reduction like that. That's certainly going to be a challenge. I look forward to other people's comments on that too.
Joe, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's doable. I think we have to be careful how we collect the data for it. I think there's several ways out there of which people are saying they're carbon neutral or they're not carbon neutral. We've just done the ARLA climate checks. We've just joined ARLA, and our figure, if we did ARLA and if we did a figure for someone else, it would probably be quite different. So I think there needs to be a standard form of to say that you are carbon neutral. Going forward, I think there's a lot of new technologies coming forward. If we can dewater slurry, I think that would be good. We've been in a NVZ for probably 20 years, so we're conforming to NVZ regulations. I think going forward, by injecting slurry, by dewatering slurry, there will be a way, by getting high yields from our cows, so we're producing less per livestock unit, perhaps, is one way we're doing it. Going forward, if you're up against it, I think in any form of industry, if you're up against it, then the technology will come and there will be ways of doing it. And I'm sure there's a collective will now to do it. And this has only come forward in the last 2 or 3 years, really, I think. So So yeah, I think we'll come up with something, definitely.
Brilliant. John Torrance.
Yeah, I think as an industry, I think we're incredibly adaptable. And when we put these things in front of us, we somehow sort it out. I mean, they're looking at seaweed, aren't they? But potentially reducing methane emissions. It's going to be a big headache. We're probably going to look down, probably utilising more byproducts to bring our carbon footprint down. I think the other thing that we really need to make sure is that DEFRA have got the right information and they're pulling facts from the right people. And we need a lot more research going on in this at the moment. I think Rothamsted are potentially looking at getting on-farm data coming up on a 2-year trial, which we've got to utilise as an industry, really, and get the right facts and put aside all these myths, really.
Yeah. No, data clearly will be key to be able to drive the industry forward and to make the changes that we need to. I am conscious of taking everybody's time up, so I've got quite a few more questions, but I'm just going to pull a couple of them together a little bit. We're moving into a new world with a new market and potentially new regulations, having left the European Union this year. With all that in mind, what piece of technology or development would you see as key to the UK dairy industry? And if you were given a spare £20,000 to be able to go and buy something tomorrow to make life easy, what would that be? So John Downing, since I gave you a stinker last time, I'll go with you this time.
Thank you so much. The second part of the question is probably the easiest bit. I think one of the things because we're on a high input, high output system where, intakes is a big thing, and we spend a huge amount of time pushing silage back to cows, and certainly on a grant, for instance, silage pushers might be something we would consider for a 20 grand investment. But it's not something we've done up to now. We're making do with silage wheels and so on and so forth. Can you just repeat the first part of the question? Sorry.
With the change in rules, what piece of technology or development would you like to see most coming into UK dairy farming?
Oh, that's truth.
Any area that you think we're missing at the moment, with or we're behind on development that we should be looking at? Not sorry.
Yeah, well, I think yes. So I look forward to the next one. You've caught me a bit flat-footed there.
Okay, Joe.
Thanks. But we've just spent an awful lot of money on the robots and our system, and that was in part to negate what's happening with labour and everything else. So that's helped. I think the slurry thing is something. I mean, we're just now on. We've just invested in a dribble bar for our slurry tanker, and I think something to do with the slurry side of things. Whether we go to a separator or whatever, that's something we ought to look at, I think. But that's our biggest headache, and I think will be our biggest headache to come, really.
Thank you. John Torrance?
Not necessarily spending money. I think the innovation of Order the Cream was the old tech, reducing your wastage, going around and potentially finding where you can pull back on what you're losing out on is... I've got Scottish roots, so I'm quite tight. So yeah, it'd be not necessarily spend it. I suppose if we're going to spend something, acidification of the slurry could be another way of reducing our emissions. But I mean, that's well out of budget at the moment. But if that comes online, then and grants come available, that might be an option.
Okay.
For the slurry.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't think I've really got anything to add to what everybody else has said. I think they've covered all the areas. Slurry is obviously an investable area at the moment for all of us, and I think that's just an ongoing battle we're all going to face.
Yeah. Is there technology that you think would help on farm that isn't available yet? Is there anything that you think that what's your biggest area of challenge in that case? That you'd like someone to wave a wand over and bring in some new technology for?
I think handling slurry and reducing the emissions from slurry is probably where we're struggling at the moment. And if somebody could wave me a magic wand for that, I'd be really grateful.
Okay.
You'll grab that.
Mark?
Yeah, we pride ourselves on growing and utilising grass. So technology to improve the measuring of the pasture. So satellite technology rather than walking around with a plate meter. I know the satellite is starting to come on board already. But that would be a good investment. I'd like a new rotary parlour as well, but you'd have to give me more than 20,000.
Brilliant, thank you. Jonathan? You're on mute, Jonathan.
Yes, in terms of spending, I think we've had a great return on rubber flooring. So I'd extend that, I think. £20,000, we put a little bit more in. I'm probably going to repeat what's previously said, but we've been looking very hard at acidification of slurry, especially as an organic farmer, the benefits of saving nitrogen and the environment. But it just seems a little bit out of reach at the moment. So I think if they could make advances on that, that'd be amazing.
Okay, brilliant. And I'll just bring in here Mike King. Mike, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'll still come back to the slurry thing. It's got to be the biggie, I think. Yeah, it's going to need more than 20 grand to put a roof over my slurry store, though, to be quite honest.
Not very far, would it?
No, that's brilliant. And finally on this one, Trevor, you've been hiding quietly on the side of my screen there.
Yeah, well, Peter, even with the joy of listening to everybody else's answers, I find myself as tongue-tied as the very first one. John, bless him, who had the poison chalice on the first go. You know, it's a topical subject for us in Wales because, of course, our minister, bless her, has decided to roll out all Wales NVZ regulation, and so the reality is, I guess, most of what NVZ requires is probably good practice. But the simple truth is, to everybody else's point, I think it's our single biggest challenge. We know the image of dairy is one, but I think that's a united challenge we all face. Whereas individually on our own farms, the one that's bespoke to us is how we cope with our own environmental challenges, and particularly as an intensive dairy unit where I've got more cows than acres. It's my biggest single challenge, Peter. I don't have any answers. I've got lots of questions in my head and no time for them now. But the thing is to confirm to everybody that I think I struggle like the rest of you with where the solutions are going to come for this one.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Well, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that's been on the panel today, to the 6 finalists and to the other people that have been helping me ask the questions and lead the debate. So thank you very much for everybody. Again, I'd like to say we hope to be out on farm as soon as possible to see you all and to learn from some very good businesses that the Gold Cup finalists have this year. So we will be in touch shortly and hope to, like I say, hope to see you all soon. Thank you again to everybody that's joined us. Thank you especially to our sponsors, and today's sponsor being NMR for the NMR RABDF Gold Cup. And we hope that we'll be able to see everybody shortly, well, in the new year at Stoney Park for Dairy Tech with a far more normal format than we have. But I'd like to take this opportunity to wish everybody a good summer. And good luck and stay safe, and thank you very much for joining us.